This week I'm going to show you how to lay electrical underfloor heating, which I must say down at this level is getting rather hot. So yes, it's time for me to install some underfloor heating here in my walk-in wardrobe, which I think is going to be easier than trying to extend the central heating system and put a radiator on the wall. And to be honest with you, I haven't really got room for a radiator anyway. And that's one of the advantages of underfloor heating, is you don't have radiators and you just have like an ambient warmth. Before I show you what I'm going to install, I'll describe the different types of underfloor heating. Essentially, there's two different types, water and electric. Firstly, water underfloor heating is fed off of a boiler in a similar way to central heating radiators, except the water goes through manifolds where regulators and valves control the flow of the hot water, which then goes into flexible heating pipes that are laid within a screed under the floor, on top of which stone, tiles, wood or carpet can then be laid. The result of these hot water pipes that zigzag within this screed, you can see using a thermal camera here in my kitchen and dining room. And because it's laid in a screed, it's normally installed at the time of construction, either the house construction or maybe an extension. Because there's a decent thickness to it, it's not really a retrofit option, and as such, not generally tackled by DIYers, and definitely not classed as a DIY job. The second type of underfloor heating is by using electricity and is definitely classed as a DIY job. It uses a mat similar to this, where an electrical heating cable zigzags up and down and obviously produces heat once it's turned on. But within the electrical type of underfloor heating, there's two different types. There's the foil type, like this. This is suitable for wood or engineered wood or laminate. And then there's another type where, rather than foil, you'll find a mesh. Now that type is suitable to be underneath stone or tiles, and it's mesh rather than foil, so the tile adhesive can go through it and bond everything together. But essentially both work in very similar ways and both have common features. For instance, both need insulation underneath them so the heat is radiated up. Now, if you're putting down tiles, that's essentially a backer board which you're going to use adhesive to lay onto your floor. If you're going to be using engineered wood like I am, then the insulation is a lot easier and a lot thinner. All I'm going to do is put that on the floor and tape the thing down. And also, both really need a thermostat. And this does two things. First of all, it can control the times it goes on and off, like you might have it on in the morning and in the evening, but not during the day. But it also controls the temperature. So this will monitor the temperature within the room and at floor level as well. So you can decide what temperature you're setting it at. If you don't have a thermostat, then potentially you could still use underfloor heating. It would either be on or off. By the time you've bothered to install all of this, you might as well spend another £50–60, put it through a thermostat and have the timer and the thermostat function as well, just so it works properly. Now, the first thing you need to do before installation is to order the materials. And because this heating cable in here cannot be cut, then essentially you order the mat for the right size for your room. So you need to work out how many square meters your room is and then order the mat to suit. And it can't go under things like wardrobes or appliances. It's only going to be in the open area. And you also take off maybe 50mm or 100mm all the way around, just so you keep away from the edge. So this is a very small room. This is a 2 square meter mat. So I had to order that to size, and let's hope it fits. So let's get on with some installation, shall we? The first thing I need to do is to put down this insulation board. But before that, I think I need to make sure that the floor is completely clean. This floor used to be tiled, so there's still some tile adhesive stuck to it. And although the insulation sheets will take up a lot of the lumps and bumps, it's still best to start with as clean and flat a floor as possible. These insulation sheets I bought from the same company as the heating mat and are 10mm thick. You lay them in a staggered pattern, and I'm just using a little trick of laying a second board on the first, so I don't have to mess around measuring anything, which works well, although I soon realised that they are quite prone to being compressed if you say kneel on them. That's why I'm keeping off them until I've got a board in place just to protect them. They just get taped together with the supplied duct tape, and it's a quick and satisfying job. So one thing that is important to do as soon as you get this out of the box is to check the resistance between the live and the neutral terminals. Essentially just checking that that wire is completely intact. Now you should get some resistance, but not that much. So you do need a digital multimeter. I'll put a link where you can buy these on Amazon. You can get them for less than £10, which as long as you're a DIY, I think is the way to go. If you're an electrician, obviously, you need something a lot more expensive with all the bells and whistles on. So all you need to do is set it to resistance and then put a terminal on the blue and the brown. It doesn't matter which way round it is. And I've got a reading here 183. And then you need to compare that to the numbers they've got in the instruction manual, and obviously each length of this has a different reading because you've got a different length and different resistance. Here it says I should be expecting a reading of 176 plus or minus 10%, so 183 is absolutely fine. I need to do that once I've installed it as well, just to prove that I haven't damaged anything on the way, but for now I can go ahead and put this in. I'm going to start laying this mat from where the power cable comes out of the mat and goes into the wall and up to the thermostat. And I've already unrolled this and measured its length. So I've got a bit of a plan on how I'm going to lay it out around the room, so I know where to make my first cut. It's easy to see where you can and can't cut, so avoiding the all-important heating cable isn't really that difficult. The instructions say it should be 50 to 100mm or 2 to 4 inches in from every edge of the room or say wardrobes, which you need to take into account when you calculate the size you need, because the last thing you want is to buy a mat that's too big. Once in place, it gets held down with duct tape, which is also easy to pull up and relay if you need to take it up and make any adjustments. As the mat is ½ metre wide and my room is 1.7 metres deep, I know that I need 3 strips with a gap of 100mm at each end to cover it. I'm just about covered everything, but I do end up with a small strip that does get a bit close to the wall, which I just cut and bend round the end. The one thing that is important is to keep earth continuity from one mat to another now you've cut it, which is done easily by connecting them with this silver conducting tape. So that's the installation of the heating mat finished. And what I would say is it's really forgiving. If you do cut it in the wrong place, you can just sort of repair it with the gaffer tape. The mat is just there to hold the wires sort of 50mm away from each other. So don't see it as cutting the mat is a problem. If you cut it in the wrong place, you can just repair it with the gaffer tape and move on. Just as long as you don't cut the wire. That cutting the wire is definitely what I'd call bad news. I've just tested it again and it looks fine. Insulation is fine. I've still got the same sort of resistance, so I know that I haven't damaged it. So we move on to powering the thing up and putting the thermostat in. This is where the thermostat's going to go, and I've got power already supplied, and I've also got this tube that this is going to take the thermostat probe all the way down to the floor because it comes out at the other end. And I've also got a little bit of a draw cord because I've got to pull the power cable up within this wall out this hole so I can wire it all in. So one cable is going down and the other one is coming up. This mat is being fed from a fuse spur coming off of my upstairs ring main. And it's important that you don't tackle a job like this unless you really know what you're doing electrically. Make sure that you follow the instructions in the installation manual for your own particular heating mat, and you're aware of what parts need to be carried out by a professional electrician so you're conforming to Part P of the building regulations. The other thing I've got to do is, as well as putting the temperature probe down this conduit, and I've also got a draw cord just to persuade it to go down, this conduit has to sit below the mat in the insulation, and it has to be sitting between two wires rather than under one wire, which will give it a false reading. So I've got to cut out a little bit of a channel, at least 300 away from the wall here, to lay this in the insulation and then fold the mat back on top of it. With it cut to length, I can send the probe down the conduit using my draw cord, and it sits at the very end of it, which you cap off with a bit of duct tape, and then everything gets held down with some more. The heating mat can then be laid back on top and get stuck down. You'll notice that the final filling and painting of my walls in this room is still outstanding, which I'm glad I've left till last, because I'm still damaging these walls by installations like this. The thermostat comes in two parts, so once the backplate is wired in and secured, the front LCD screen can then be pushed on and fixed with a single screw at the bottom. Before I lay my engineered wood directly on top of this mat, I'm keen to test it. Cool. So I increase the temperature of the thermostat so it calls for heat, and then monitor it with my thermal camera. So that heated up pretty quickly, and then before you know it, it's cooling down. I wondered what was going on, but actually all that happened was the thermostat recognised it had reached whatever temperature I'd plugged in. So when I increased the temperature, suddenly it came back on again, and it's pretty warm actually. I know the thermal imaging camera pointed out all the curves. They were definitely the hottest bit, but there's not that much difference between the bend at the end, the radius at the end, and the straight actually. I can't feel much difference. So I assume it's just where it goes round the radius, for some reason it just gets a bit hotter, maybe a bit of stress in the wire there. But actually, yeah, you can imagine after maybe half an hour, that coming through the engineered floor, which is what I'm putting on top of this, and actually making a nice warm environment. So that's the next thing to do, is to put a bit of flooring down, and then we can maybe wrap up this little project. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and you know a little bit more about underfloor heating than you did 15 minutes ago. I will see you next time.